Clint's going to do that, and then I'm going to come in and actually go through the bill with you to hopefully answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Deborah, and thanks for everybody that's participating in this webinar today. Again, the purpose is to inform you about what ACCG will be seeking from the legislature this session in regards to 911 legislation. We hope to continue to work with everybody that's on the call throughout the session to coordinate and make things work more effectively down there at the Capitol. We'd appreciate it as you see the draft legislation and you start commenting on things that you like or you don't like, to please contact Debra Nesbit on our staff before reaching out to any of your legislators. Again, we want to kind of be the central repository for the information and decide if there's something that we overlook that needs to get fixed. It's an easy fix. A lot of the things that you may bring up, we could probably address. So again, before reaching out to your legislators, please contact Deborah. You all that are on the call probably are very familiar with the Governor's Study Committee on 911 that happened a few years ago. We were a part of that study committee. And then there was also a Senate Study Committee on 911. Both of those reports called for a lot of similar reforms. We feel like, looking at what's going on in other states and what's likely to come to Georgia, that there's going to be changes, and we have to make a decision whether we want to be proactive in suggesting what those changes should be, or be reactive and wait for somebody else to present those changes and have to react to them. Our policy council has taken the position that ACCG is a proactive organization, and since we recognize that these changes are likely coming our way, we should get out in front of it and try to propose solutions that protect the counties and the cities that have 911 systems, protect their best interests. So a couple of things that you're going to see today as we go through this draft proposal is we recognize that there's the need to have more auditing done. Many counties and cities that have 911 centers can't afford to do the auditing and have not done auditing of the 911 revenues. There's some litigation going on right now where there's a claim that a lot of 911 revenues have not been remitted to localities, and we really do feel like there is a lot of revenues that have gone unremitted that are out there. And so one of the purposes is to try to get a better system in place for auditing revenues on behalf of all PSAPs across the state. Another thing is cost recovery. That was put into place under the original law to help the providers pay for the technology costs on their end. We think that's an outdated system that's not needed, and so we plan to try to eliminate cost recovery in this legislation, which would produce new 911 revenues without having to raise the rate. The other thing that will produce new 911 revenues without having to raise the rate is taking, well, actually, we would raise the prepaid rate from 75 cents to $1.50, but it's the only thing now that's less than $1.50, and we feel strongly that that should be at $1.50 like everything else. So those two things and the auditing should produce more 911 revenues, which I know most of you could use. And then the thing that may be more controversial when we'll get into this is centralized collections of 911 revenues. Georgia's one of the few states that has such a decentralized system of collections. We think there's a lot of benefit in centralized collections if we do it right. Obviously, ACCG, just like the 911 PSAPs, have no interest in letting the state get a hold of the 911 revenues. We saw what happened with prepaid years ago when the state was collecting it. It was actually levied by the state and they were collecting it. It was subject to their appropriation powers. And we're not going to go down that road, I can assure you. We're looking at an authority, but we're going to make sure that legally they remain local revenues adopted by local ordinances, and they get back to the same jurisdictions as they go to today. And that the local officials, whether that's 911 staff or county commissioners, city councilmen, sheriffs, and others, are in control of the board for the 911 authority. And there's other things that we think this 911 authority can do as far as being a central repository for registration information, as well as helping provide statewide training standards. We unfortunately, GEMA has not been as involved as they used to be in helping coordinate 911 statewide, and we feel like there is some need to have some statewide coordination when it comes to 911, and we think this authority can fill that void. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Deborah to go through the legislation, and we'll answer any questions that you have. And I'm sure as you all continue to digest this, you'll have more questions next week. And I want to, again, encourage you to please reach out to us first with your questions before going elsewhere. And let's all try to stay on the same page as we move this legislation forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Clint. That was Clint Mueller, our legislative director here at ACCG. Again, I'm Debra Nesbit. I'm one of the policy staff and the person that's working on this legislation in the Public Safety Committee. So, Clint, thanks for giving us that background. Some of the documents that are there for you to download that I provided. One was the Governor's Commission on 911. Those are the executive summary, and it has the recommendations that commission came up with. The Senate Study Committee that met, that report is also there, which includes their recommendations. I included those because I think as you look through those, and those are not very long documents, once we finish the webinar, you'll see that a lot of what we've incorporated into this legislation really are the recommendations from the Governor's Commission and the Senate Study Committee. The Governor's office is aware that we're having the bill, that we have the bill, they're on board. The Sheriff's Association has voted to support the legislation. Of course, the industry is working with us on this, as well as the 911 Directors Associations. So to begin with, I know you all have seen these talking points several times, but looking at a piece of legislation is quite boring. So the first thing I'm going to do is scroll down through these talking points very quickly. Clint touched on most of this, but just before we get started, so that you'll know what's included in the bill, it will make all of the 911 fees across the board, prepaid included, $1.50. It eliminates the cost recovery provision that the AT&T and some of the other providers bill you for cost recovery, which can be up to 30 cents of your $1.25 or $1.50 fee, whatever it is you're charging. That will go away, so that's an automatic increase. And the money that you receive in prepaid from DOR on an annual basis, that will double under this new proposal. What we look to do is to create a local government 911 authority, which is an independent authority that does not report to any agency of the state. It is an independent authority. It does not fall under any state agency. The board is made up of local government representatives, a GEMA representative, and right now we have a Department of Public Safety representative in the bill. That may change. We may decide that there's a better suited position to go there. One of the reasons we included that is that they are a first responder that operates statewide. The authority, through its board of directors, will serve as the coordinating body for all 911 activities in the state, and including the collection of the 911 fees. But there are a lot of other things that have heretofore kind of gone undone, and that is to develop standards for coordination and implementation of the statewide emergency systems. As Clint said, provide statewide auditing of the service suppliers to ensure compliance with the payments, provide oversight of the service suppliers to ensure compliance, and if they're not compliant, actually have some teeth to make them comply, which is something we have not had. Collect 911 fees paid by the service suppliers in a centralized location. The fees will be reported and remitted by the service suppliers and providers on a monthly basis by jurisdiction to the authority. The authority will then transfer those payments back down to the local governments from which the fees came. That was a question that I've gotten, is are you going to divvy the money up based on a formula? No, you will get the fees back that that come from your PSAP. The authority will provide a policymaking body to promulgate standards for rules and training for all 911 centers and 911 operations, and for an ongoing evaluation of the 911 system. As you know, there really has not been any coordinated training for the 911 directors or 911 employees. we are standards for 911 centers. So we hope that through this authority, we will be able to do a better job of that for the state of Georgia. I'm now going to put the legislation up, and I hope that most of you could download it because it is going to be kind of difficult to read through it. I see a question up there about the legislation appears to cap 911 fees. If you'll go over to section 11, that has been removed. I don't know which copy you're looking at or where you got it, but that has been removed. The draft that we have up there has been taken out of that. Again, you can look under section 11. The first part of the bill, really the first probably 10 or 12 pages, really just kind of lays out the format of creating the authority. And we followed the format that many of the other authorities in the state, the same format that they're created under. So there's nothing real earth-shattering in those first few pages, other than to lay out some definitions, but most of those come from the current code. So I'm scrolling through here till I get to a place that, because again, that's all very straightforward. There's nothing really to explain. The one thing to bring your attention to, at the bottom of page 4, the director of GEMA will convene the initial meeting of the board of directors no later than July 15th, 2016. At that time, the authority will elect a chair, and GEMA will sit as a member on the authority board, but this will not be under GEMA. It is an independent agency. Going on over to page 5, if you look about middle ways down the page, like at number 4, we think this is a big deal, really. It will allow the authority to apply and accept grants on behalf of 911 in the state. As you know, Georgia missed out on a lot of federal grant opportunities because all of the fees were not going to 911. So we hope we hope that the authority can turn that around and begin to try to explore bringing down some of those federal dollars to Georgia. Again, it's just going over the standard language, really, that most of the authorities have. All the funds will be deemed trust funds. That's probably important to note. Going on to page 7, at the top of the page, I've had this question, 3693-4. The board of the authority can appoint an executive director as the administrative head of the authority, and they will establish the salary, any employees that may need to be there, prescribe their duties and responsibilities, and all of those things. All of those folks will serve at the pleasure of the board and the executive director. If you go to page 8, it kind of sets out what the violations would be and what the penalties would be for service providers who don't comply with the reporting requirements. So there will be consequences for that. Another question I'd gotten earlier was that they're still going to use the enhanced zip code for the fees to come back to your jurisdiction. And so all of those definitions really have stayed the same. I'm skipping through. And again, if anybody's got a specific question about something you saw in this section, I will be glad to answer that. Most of this came from existing law. It's just moved around some. And I'm trying to get to the parts that are pertinent that you're probably most concerned about.
There is one question up there that we have. It says, can you explain the section about fees must be lowered if your ETSF balance is 1 1/2 times the previous year? I believe that's current law. I don't think that's being changed. That's current law. We're not changing that. If you're suggesting that that should be changed, then let us know. But we have not flagged that to change it in this proposed legislation.
Okay. All right, going to page 16 at the top. Another thing that we've had issues with here in Georgia is GEMA would register the providers, and when they did that, the providers registered for all of the counties that they could potentially do business in, and most of them did not do business in all of those counties. So we have added a paragraph that says not only do they need to tell the authority where they can do business in Georgia, which counties, but also which counties they are providing service to, and they have to notify the authority within 10 days if they commence a service in any county that they have not already notified us that they are operating in. Many of you have, in trying to figure out if you're getting all of your revenue and if everyone's paying the fees as they're supposed to, have had a hard time figuring out who's actually doing business in their county. So we hope that that will help clear that up some.
One of the things where we think there's some revenue being lost is these VoIP providers. There's hundreds and hundreds of them out there. What we've heard is they've taken the stance that if you don't notify them that they are required to collect your 911 fee, that they're not going to collect your 911 fee. The problem is you don't know who they are, so you're not notifying them. And so there's a lot of VoIP providers out there that are providing service to customers in your county because you're not aware they're doing it, and they're not collecting your 911 fee. So we're hoping by putting some teeth in the law and forcing them to register, at least you'll know who to send your request to collect your 911 fees.
And again, if you look under C, it takes out that, it's a penalty for them not notifying. The next few are just standard sections, saying you can, do an emblem and apply for federal funding and whatnot. If you go to page 18 under section 11, this is where the fee goes to $1.50. Used to, it couldn't exceed $1.50. Some of it, I know at least one county had it at $1.25. This just makes it $1.50 across the board. And that's on all your landlines.
Go back up a little bit.
All right, I'm just scrolling through here, making sure I'm catching up on everything. 20. All right, one thing I did want to note under D1, right now the service providers collect 3% of the gross fees that they collect for you. We're going to try to negotiate that a little bit with them. One of the reasons for the centralized collection is that the providers really want that. It is an administrative nightmare for all of them to send out checks on a monthly basis to 140 some odd PSAPs. And so that will greatly reduce some of their administrative costs. So we're hoping that we can negotiate with them to maybe recoup maybe a percentage of that back that would stay with the locals. I don't know if we'll be successful. We're certainly going to try. So I did want to bring that to your attention. That has been brought up several times as well. If you go over to page 21 at the bottom, this is the elimination of the cost recovery. it eliminates them taking the cost recovery out of the 911 fee for the locals. Providers can still bill on their bill for cost recovery, but it would be passed straight to the customer and would not come out of your 911 fee. Move on down to, and again, a lot of this is current statute. If you get down to section 12 on page 24, this is the increase in the prepaid. So essentially, whatever you're getting from the Department of Revenue now will double. And we hope that will continue to increase as well. That we are not changing the way that those monies are collected and distributed. Right now, those prepaid fees are collected at the point of sale. They're sent to DOR just like sales tax is. As you know, once a year in October, they divide that money up by a formula, which is really based on population of your PSAP, and you get a check for that every year. Because that is point of sale and it's done through the retailers and it's working, quite frankly, we are not going to include that in the duties of the authority. So that will continue to be done the way that it is, except that your money will double. And that really hits the high points of the legislation. I know that the devil is in the details, and we're trying our best to work through those. A lot of authority has been invested in the authority and its board. And remember, those folks are local government people. There'll be no state people other than the GEMA representative on there that will be dictating how that board makes its decisions. So if there are some things that you think should be detailed more clearly in the legislation that would really fall under the auspices of the board, I would encourage you to give them as much flexibility as they can have in starting up, because they're going to have the authority to do it. The last thing I want to talk a little bit about are the effective dates. And I think that we are going to try to get one of the, some of these may change a little, but essentially the authority needs to come into being on July 1 of 2016 so that they can plan for actual implementation. And when they actually start collecting fees and remitting them and dispersing them, that will be effective January 1, 2017. On the prepaid fee increase, it has been put at January 1, 2017, because the retailers have to reprogram their systems to change that amount. And so that's just giving everybody time to get ready. I was looking to see if we had any other questions. I know that there is training. There just is not a lot of training, and it's not provided. We talked about the balances. Okay, this legislation appears to remove any limit on the amount of wireless cost recovery fee a provider can use to offset their 911 fee payment. The cost recovery was never supposed to be to offset anybody's 911 fee payment. It was supposed to be to build out your system to provide the service. So we really have not done an analysis. We would have to know what you were using that cost recovery for in order to do an analysis. I hope that answers that question.
The providers under this legislation obviously won't take their cost recovery out of your 911 fee. However, they've been given this flexibility to charge their customers a separate fee, separate from the 911 fee, to recover any costs that they may have. But that's really between the provider and their customers as to what they want to set that at. The important thing for us is that whatever they charge is not going to come out of the 911 fee. You're going to get the full $1.50.
All right, you click on the next question. No, it says, how can you give back exactly what is collected county by county? Oh, there it is. if you are including pay. Okay, we are not including prepaid wireless. There's two different systems working here. The authority will collect the fees from the providers on landlines and regular wireless cellular service. Prepaid will still be done at point of sale and remitted to the Department of Revenue, and those prepaid revenues will be divided up on that formula by population. The money that comes from the landlines and the wireless service will go back to the county that it came from. The providers will provide us a report every month saying how much they collected within each PSAP. That's what the authority will then remit back to the county. The next question is, who will fund the authority? There is a 3%, up to a 3% charge that the authority will have on the funds that will be used to operate the authority and to provide auditing services for all of the providers. It says up to 3%. Again, that is for the authority to decide what that administrative fee would need to be based on the auditing needs.
And we envision that there may be one staff person for the authority, but most of everything the authority does will be done through a contract. So they will contract for services, whether it's auditing and other things that they need. They, again, hopefully they won't need the full 3%, but we wanted to go ahead and put that in there just in case we don't know what the kind of needs that you all may have for the authority to do in the future. And some of that may get recovered if we can reduce the 3% of that the providers are retaining right now. So we're going to be, again, negotiating over what we need to run the authority and what we think the providers need to retain to continue to do what they need to do on their end.
The next question is the next statement is the finance representative should be from a county. It is. It says one county finance director from a county with a PSAP. So we do have that in there. Again, we just answered the thing about the percentage. That answers it too. We have gotten, we've really only talked to two of the carriers, the two largest ones, and they're fine with eliminating cost recovery. That is really kind of where the negotiation came for the centralized collection. And it varies from PSAP to PSAP, but that elimination of cost recovery could be anywhere from 18 to 25% increase in your revenues based on what they were billing you and who was billing you.
Read the question.
Okay. The next question is at the bottom of page 7. It appears that the prepaid wireless will now be remitted to individual agencies rather than the authority. Is that correct? Yes. Again, the prepaid wireless is going to remain the same as it is right now. It's going to be collected at point of sale, goes to the Department of Revenue along with sales tax, and is remitted back to the locals on an annual basis in October based on the population formula. The next question was how will it be funded? We've already answered that. The next question is if the authority is a pass-through and not a part of a state agency, how would an executive director and employees be funded? Through the 3% or up to 3% that's retained by the authority. Why is the definition of telephone service on page 12 being changed? I'll have to look at that to see. That is changed to try to capture any device that will be able to contact 911, not just through a regular telephone line. As technology advances, there will be many different ways that people can access 911 services, and so we're trying to broaden that to catch the new technology. The next question is, We believe that the current law requires providers to pay based on the number of phone numbers they provide that can call 911. Again, this legislation appears to change the definition so that providers will pay based on the number of lines they provide. I'm not so sure that's what it did. Again, we changed that definition to encompass more of the current technology. The next question is from Fort Stewart, 911. How does it impact PSAPs on federal installations? I'm not really sure about that.
What's the difference now?
It will be no different than it is now. Next statement is, you say it is for landlines. Why not wireless and prepaid as well on the $1.50? It is on all three of them. It's on landlines, wireless, and prepaid. The next one is cost recovery. The language does not specify anywhere that it is to be directed to the subscriber. I think in that language, whenever we struck it out, there was a sentence in there about the ability of the providers to put it on their bill to their customers, to bill their customers directly. This legislation appears to cap 911 fees for businesses at 12 lines. Somebody's looking at an old version again. That has been taken out of the bill. Again, it's asking a question about the 3%. It is up to 3%. The board will decide what that percentage would be. The next question, has there been any additional discussion on how a single building with multiple landlines is treated? No, this legislation has nothing to do with the current litigation that is going on out there. This will not impact that case. This has nothing to do with that case. So we have not had any discussion on that. Has an analysis been conducted to determine financial impact on counties? We do have some numbers, but because we don't have any mandatory reporting right now of how much each PSAP is receiving in funding, it's very difficult to come up with a solid number. But again, the prepaid money will double. Whatever you get in October from DOR will at least double. And we think that the elimination of cost recovery, again, is 18 to 25% increase in the revenue kept at the local level. The next question, will the authority have the power to withhold funds from local agencies if a local agency fails to meet the rules that they promulgate? No, they will not. The way this is set up is that each county or PSAP or local government has to adopt an ordinance or resolution to put the fee on the bills, and so that then it's local money. The authority will only be collecting the money. They will not be able to keep anybody's money.
This authority won't be promulgating rules and regulations like a state agency would. They may create some best practices and some standards, but they would not have the ability to force counties or cities that have 911 centers to provide any service at that level. You're still having to make your own decisions as to what service level you want to provide locally. They just may create some service standards that, again, give you some goals to achieve, but there would be no mandate in as far as level of service you have to provide locally.
Okay, the next question is, it is not clear what is to prevent providers from just charging unlimited cost recovery to the local PSAP. They're not going to charge the PSAP cost recovery. I'm trying to find that section so I can try to see what it is. Yeah, I'm not sure.
We'll take another look at that, but the goal there is to prevent them from charging us any cost recovery. So if somebody thinks that the language leaves the door open for them to decide what kind of amount they want to charge us, they're not supposed to be able to charge us anything. And so we're going to make that very clear in the law if it's not already clear.
All right, so what it says is a wireless service supplier may recover its cost expended on the implementation and provision of wireless enhanced 911 services to subscribers by imposing a cost recovery fee or including such cost in existing cost or regulatory recovery fees. So that says nothing about the local government. That's what they can put on their subscribers. And PSAPs are not a subscriber.
They can charge something outside of the 911 fee to their subscribers if they choose to do so, but they can't take any of that cost recovery out of your 911 fee like they do today.
All right, the next question is, so would we lose local collections from July 1, 2016 until distribution begins? No, you will continue to get your funding the regular way. I mean, you'll continue to get it. The only reason we have that July 1, 2016 date is for the board, the authority for them to organize and put in place a system to begin collecting and distributing the funds. The next one is who proposed the idea of creating this authority? The idea originated, a lot of states around us and throughout the country have done this. Some of them don't call it a 911 authority, they call it a statewide board or whatever, but most of them are somewhat independent. And several years ago when we did the prepaid legislation, to have the prepaid come back to the locals after the state had kept it all those years. When we initially started that, we were going to do a prepaid wireless 911 authority, and that authority was going to be to do exactly what DOR is doing. At the time, it was during the economic downturn, and the legislators and the governor were hesitant to create additional entities. And clearly we're at a different place with the economy, different governor. So, and he's been in office for a while. So, I think at this point, given next gen and all that's coming down the pike with 911, I think they see the benefit to having an authority to help coordinate those activities, and as well as doing the centralized collection, which is something that the industry has really asked for.
We had to figure out there's got to be some entity that can provide the statewide coordination on 911. And we felt very strongly that any state agency we would lose control over the state agencies, because the state agencies obviously report directly to the governor. They're subject to the appropriation powers of the General Assembly, and we would have no control over any of this done through any kind of state agency. So that was the only other option here, was to create an authority that's outside the control of state legislature and the governor's office, that we can control, because we will have local officials on the board and let them do the coordination. We feel a whole lot more comfortable that people that have invested in this system and are a part of this system being the ones controlling the system, instead of somebody from the outside that's not a part of the 911 system in Georgia controlling the statewide coordination. So even today under GEMA, they don't really have expertise in what the 911 PSAPs do, and we don't even feel comfortable with having a state agency like GEMA having say-so over how we do 911 in Georgia. We want to keep the control locally, but we also understand there needs to be state coordination, and this was the way to try to achieve local control but provide statewide coordination.
The next question is, can we make sure that county governments only use the 911 fund for 911 expenses as to page 22? That will be the same that it is today. There's statutes out there that say you can't use it for anything but that, and that's the statute. So that's not going to change under this new authority. Who is going to provide legal services, county attorney or attorney general? The Attorney General does provide some services to the authority. I did clarify that. And the authority has the ability to hire general counsel or an attorney to represent it. Who will fund the authority the first 6 months? We don't think that there will really be any funding necessary other than to convene some meetings of the board. So we don't think that's really going to be an issue. The next one is, does this fee apply to free phones given out by DFACS? That would stay the same. Nothing in this bill changes the way any of that is done. Where the executive director, the question is, where does the executive director's salary come from? It comes from the percentage retained by the authority. The next question is, do we know how much money has been collected annually for the landlines and wireless? No, because we don't have the reports completed every year by all of the PSAPs like we used to, so we don't know what the total dollars are for that. However, when the authority gets up and going, we will have all of that information. Next question or comment, I have a concern with central recovery and disbursement, not for lack of trust, but because of a glitch or problem in that one choke point of funds could shut down disbursements of 911 revenues for the entire state. Well, you know, I mean, I can't say that there would never be any issue, but I don't know that the Department of Revenue's ever just had a glitch that completely shut them down. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, it is made up of local government officials, and if there is a glitch, you can believe everybody's going to be trying to get that fixed to get that money back to their local jurisdictions, because it's not the state, they are local officials.
One of the job of the board will be to make sure that they've got redundancy in place, and that they basically have ways to deal with any issues that could come up with their software vendor or any of their other vendors. So just like you all do at the county level, you've got redundancies and you plan for unexpected events. This authority will have to do the same.
Okay, the next question is, does this bill have any effect on the pending lawsuits that some ACCG members have filed? Is it retro? There's nothing in this bill that has anything to do with the current litigation or lawsuits. Nothing in the bill will impact those lawsuits. When will the bill be appointed, and who is over appointments? The appointments would be made prior to July 1 of 2016. The appointments are very specific in language. The governor does get to make the appointments, but I will give you an example.
But they're based on specific types of positions and the recommendations of different groups.
Right, and the NINA has a representation, APCO and the 911 Directors Association, 2 sheriffs who have the responsibility of a PSAP underneath them. And things like that. They are very specific as to what they would be.
And if you all have suggestions for us, that's an area of the bill that we can continue to modify and negotiate on. Again, the ultimate goal was to make sure local officials, whether that's staff or elected officials, are in control of this board. But as far as the type of local official that serves, we want a good cross-section. If you feel like the cross-section that's in the bill is not the correct cross-section of officials we need, feel free to make your recommendations to us.
The next question is, are VoIP lines included? Yes, the same as they are now, although we don't know for sure they're all paying. We hope that the authority will be able to clear that up and better regulate that. The next question is, will collection info be provided to us by the authority? Number of lines, source type, county, or just the amount of dollars collected. I would imagine that a report from the authority would tell you how many lines they collected on. I don't think that they will be able to, and this was something industry asked for, and I don't know that I blame them, is that, they don't want to publish, like, how many lines each provider's got, because of the competitiveness of those providers. But certainly I would think that they would tell you the number of lines that they've collected 911 fees on. But again, a lot of these questions would go to the authority board as they set up their operating procedures. So it's kind of difficult to give you a definite answer on some of them, because it will be the decision of the board. Next question. Prepaid calling services are excluded from the definition of telephone service. It's in another section of the code. It's just not in that section. It's in the prepaid section. How will we ensure representation on the board of directors for all size PSAPs? That, again, would be up to the governor and who he appoints. ABCO, NENA, and the 911 Directors Association, they give a recommendation to the governor of who they want on the board. Those three organizations could collaborate and make sure that they've got a wide spectrum of representation through those three positions. At the very least, I would imagine that there will be representation for all sizes, but if there was ever a problem, certainly through those three appointments, that could be addressed. Do you ever see the fee changing from $1.50? And if so, how would that be accomplished? I doubt very seriously we will ever see that fee go up, not in the near future. Based on the research we have done, we're one of the highest 911 fees in the country. The legislature has absolutely no appetite for increasing any fee, anytime, anywhere, for anything. So the best that we could do to try to increase and maximize the existing revenues were what has been included in this bill, and that has taken the fee, all the fees, to $150 and eliminating cost recovery. Do you anticipate that the counties need to adopt an updated 911 fee collection resolution as a result of this legislation? It's very possibly so. That's something that Jim Grubiak and I talked about. And so probably if the bill passes, we will recommend that everybody update that resolution. Many of those were adopted back in the 70s when the 911 fees initially started.
And we'll put out a model, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we'll have a model ordinance. Was there discussion to increase the 911 surcharge from $1.50 to $2 or $2.50 on landlines? Yes, there was discussion, and there was no appetite for it. There was discussion on the governor's commission. There have been discussions over the years, and there was really no appetite for that. How much do you estimate the 3% amount will be for the authority? Again, it's hard to tell because we don't have a total dollar amount as to what's currently collected in Georgia in 911 fees, because we have a decentralized system and there's no annual reporting of that.
Please remember, though, it's up to 3%. It's not definitely going to be 3%. And also remember that whatever cost there is up to the 3% is going to be much lower than the new revenues you're going to generate based on these other provisions in the piece of legislation. And also remember that this administrative fee is going to be providing services that you may not otherwise be able to afford today. So, for example, the auditing services, you can't probably afford to do an audit on your own of an AT&T and a Verizon and all these big companies. It would cost you way too much. But collectively, using some of this administrative fee, you guys together can do a single audit of these larger companies. So you're getting a benefit back for paying this administrative fee, or the administrative fee up to 3% coming out of the authority. Not only are you going to get more than that in new revenue, but you're going to get some services that you can't otherwise afford by yourself.
Okay, the next question is next gen. Will that be a decision locally and funded if they can at the local level? Again, that's in the future. Another reason why we think that this authority is so vitally important is that they will help coordinate that and hopefully figure some of those things out. Right now, because there is no statewide coordination, there really aren't any good answers for that.
And we think that obviously the federal government has an interest in next gen, and there may be federal dollars that will become available in the future, and this authority can go after those dollars where we're not really able to go after federal dollars today.
All right, the next question is, what is to stop the providers from adding charges for modernization upgrades like text to 911? I'm not sure who they would add those charges to. They could probably add it to a subscriber bill, but that would be between them and their customer. There's nothing in here that would allow them to add any charges back to a PSAP. How will the board members be chosen? The governor makes those appointments based on recommendation from the groups that those positions are that they're representing. Has the telecommunications industry, there we go, been invited to provide any input in this proposed legislation? Yes, they have. They actually have helped us draft some of this language. Do you have a sense whether the industry will support or oppose it? I know that some of the largest providers are supporting it. I don't know that all will support it, but I know the larger carriers are supporting it. Do you anticipate anything that would not be disclosed to local authorities? No, other than the number of customers that a provider has in any given PSAP. That would be the only thing. Top of page 19C, this paragraph shall not apply to wireless service. Does this section need to be removed? We will take a look at that. We've reviewed this several times with attorneys, but we will take a look at it and see. How many members are on the board? I think it was 14 or 15. There are some fears that the authority will try to dictate what PSAPs purchase as far as equipment. Is this a myth? Yes. Again, the authority is made up of local officials whose number one concern typically is local control. So I really don't see that happening.
I can envision the authority when it comes to, say, interoperability, making some suggestions as to the type of technology that would be interoperable. And so when you're going out to bid for your equipment, that would be valuable information to look at to say, if we want to be able to communicate with other PSAPs and make sure we're as interoperable as we can, you know, what are there any state standards that have been set or that kind of thing? I know that Georgia Tech a few years ago was looking at that issue. So again, but that would all be information that would be available to you through the authority. You would have to make the decision whether you used it or not. Again, it's a coordinating entity, so they're going to try to tell you what other jurisdictions are doing and maybe, again, give you best practices, but they're not going to dictate anything to you. You still have to choose whether you want to use that information or not.
Is there an audit process for the authority? No, there has not been an audit process set up. The authority would need to do that. Some of the questions are very detailed, and these are things that the authority would have to determine. Again, when I talked about leaving flexibility in the statute for the authority to make decisions, I mean, this is an example of one you certainly would not want to put that into legislation. So I'm going to try to scroll through these and make sure that we're not answering the same question. This one is, what kind of backup information would we receive from the authority on collections, or would we just receive a deposit with no backup? I don't know. I would imagine they would tell you how many lines had been reported. in your PSAP for which you're receiving payments. The governor, the various groups that are represented on the board will be the ones to make the recommendations to the governor for appointments. Suggestion instead of the Department of Public Safety, what about a police chief where there is a city PSAP? That is still under discussion. Most likely, it would probably be an EMA director. If you do not know how much revenue is currently being collected, then how do you know that 3% will be enough? Also, if the 3% is not enough, will it take legislation to change it? Based on preliminary numbers, we think that 3% would be probably more than enough, which is why we put up to 3% to build in, and that's just in an abundance of caution in the event that there's not. If 3% is not enough, it would indeed take legislation to change that. Is 3% deducted on the total amounts collected or individually? It's the same thing. It would be 3% of whatever was collected in any given month. All right, we've answered that one. Currently, there is a county governing authority attempting to strip the local sheriff's office of the 911 system, which it has maintained. If this happens, will the governing authority be the sole recipient of those funds? Whoever operates the PSAP is who would get the funds. And so as far as the governing authority and the sheriff's office, and those are local issues that I'm not even going to weigh into because, again, that's
the primary PSAP receives the money.
Yeah, the primary PSAP would receive the money.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if you are part of an authority, a local regional authority, or it's with the sheriff's office, or it's under the county manager's office. Those are all local decisions, but whoever the designated PSAP is, that's who the statewide authority will send the money to.
All right. What kind of data did ACCG consider when drafting the legislation regarding the amount of fees that can or should be charged, and what counties did that data come from? We didn't really do a lot of research on keeping the fee at $1.50. Really, our marching orders were to not increase the fee. And so that's where we came up with the elimination of cost recovery and taking the prepaid to $1.50 to make it equal across the board.
Regardless of the justification for increasing it above $1.50, I know that a lot of you heavily subsidize it, and that will continue. This is not going to solve that problem. But raising it above $1.50, that's a political problem that is just not passable down there at the General Assembly. You also have to remember when they're looking at other states that have much lower 911 fees, a lot of those states pay for the operations of their 911 center out of their general funds. They're not paying using the 911 fee itself. They're using the 911 fee for things like equipment. So we're kind of lucky in the state of Georgia that we have so much flexibility in how we use our 911 fees, that we can pay salaries and benefits and all these other things that most other states cannot use their 911 fees for. So we have to be very careful going down that road, because the providers and others in the state have suggested that maybe we be more similar to other states and have more limitations on how we use our 911 fees. So I think politically we can't go any higher than $1.50 at least right now.
What power will the local government have if any issue arises with the board? The board, again, is going to be run by local government officials. It does fall under the same regulation or, Kelly, I don't know what you'd call it, as any other entity, any other authority in the state, whereby they have to undergo audits and all of those things with the state. So the next one is, will the authority have any ability to help with the implementation of NextGen? Yes, we certainly hope so. That was one of the reasons we thought the authority was an appropriate solution. Another reference to some language on page 21. We'll take a look at that and see if that needs to be changed. Has there been any push to move to a statewide 911 function, training, fees, certification? Actually, the authority would kind of be the statewide system. Not that they would run your actual 911 services, but certainly for training, planning, all of those things, all of that would pretty much go to the authority. Again, whoever, who will police the authority, hopefully they won't need to be policed, but they will fall under the same requirements as other entities in the state of a similar nature. As long as they don't dictate the manufacture of equipment, it would be fine for the authority to make reservations.
Let me remind everybody, this authority is not like a state agency. Again, it doesn't have the ability to do rules and regulations like an authority, and you're not subject to, they have no ability to force anything down on you as far as standards go, or as far as types of equipment you can use. They're not being given that power, so that should not be a worry.
Next question. We only got a couple more, and then we're going to wrap it up. We're close. We're a little over our hour. We see that this session is being recorded. Can we obtain this to share with other parties? Yes, we will post it on our website, and you will be able to share that with other people. It should be there by Monday morning. I see that the disbursement of funds are completed pro rata. Would it be good to have counties quickly submit ACCG their current total collections? Well, no, it's not. It's pro rata based on where it came from. So it's not on a formula.
We're not taking a snapshot of your percentage of revenues relative to the entire state revenues on 911 and encoding any kind of percentage that you're going to get in the future. It's still based on where it's actually where the primary use of that phone is, and so that's up to the providers, obviously, and the authority may audit that and determine if the providers have that correct. But we're not changing, again, what dictates in state law where the money goes back to. That's going to remain the same.
And the last question we have up here is about the +4 and the zip codes and the overlapping county boundaries. This has been an ongoing problem. It continues to be a problem. It's a problem with no solution, quite frankly, at this point. But these would be the kind of issues that I would think the authority could really study and try to come up with solutions. But this bill does not address that. The language in the bill is existing law as to how those zip codes are utilized for the payment of 911 fees. That is our last question that we have up on the board. I hope that you all have found this helpful. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to us go through the reasoning for everything in the bill. And again, this year seems to be the right year to get this legislation through. So we do again encourage you, if you have issues or concerns or specifics that you want to point out to us, please bring that to us before you go to your local legislative delegation or whoever, so that we can try to work with you to get a bill that everybody is comfortable with, so that we can move this forward. Again, we thank you for participating and look forward to hearing from you.